yeah, it's going to be exciting for sure.
Awesome. Hello there.
All right, I'll start the event then.
Sounds
There
good.
we go. Okay, the announcement usually takes a couple of seconds to actually chat everyone in the server, but soon enough we should start getting our attendees. But yeah, so today we are joined by Robert, who has won with his project the most recent Big Projects Creators Pick, which is a poll that we hold in our server wherein the project representatives that are present here in the server can vote on their favorite projects. And yeah, we have invited Robert as the most recent winner, and he has accepted to join. Thank you so much. Yeah, definitely very excited to get into your project and talk a little bit more about your trajectory in the Wax blockchain and some of the things you are working on. Definitely, I think it's a good idea for us to start there. Like, what has been your trajectory in the space? You know, what got you into it, and what are some of the things that motivate you about Wax?
Yeah. So you want me to just start? Is that?
Yeah, just introduce yourself. Pretty much, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, just give it. Assuming that people in the audience might not be familiar with Castle NFTs or the MetaSource ecosystem, or even you yourself personally, just to give them a little bit of background information.
Yeah, sure. So I am Robert Trusardi. I am the creator of Castles and Metasource Games. We create the Castles game, and historically, I've actually been a filmmaker. I was involved in technology a little bit, like around the early 2000s. I was basically like the guy responsible for the Disney.com homepage. Way back in the day, you know, they didn't have content management systems. Well, we had producers who were the content schedulers, and then I was like the you know what, these days we have code do it, but I was the one who went in and put in, like, on, you know, Thursday Winnie the Pooh is going to have like a game or something, like a coloring game on this part of the website, so I had to go in and physically make that happen every day. So I would have basically just like you know, entire folder full of like the next week's home pages, and they would just push those live, but I was the one who went in and made the homepage and put everything where it was. And so I got into technology way back then. And I'm not really the typical like Silicon Valley guy, because I did all this in LA. So we were based in LA. Back then, they didn't really have web producers. They basically pulled all the movie producers off of, you know, the latest episode of like whatever it was that they were making, and they were like, hey, you can produce things, go do this internet thing, go to Disney.com office and figure it out, like help us build the Disney.com website. So that is how I really got my start inside of the industry way back in like the 2000s. And I was doing that for a while. I went to another startup, but eventually got into movies. So I was actually working as a film editor for a long time, and the last thing I was doing in movies was actually more screenwriting. Um, but I've always been interested in technology. I was the kind of guy who like was reading Wired news articles like every day. Like I was just super interested in technology, what was upcoming, and I kind of was obsessed with the whole concept of being able to own your own game items. So I was familiar with, you know, what most people who have been in this space or interested in this space are familiar with, like Project Entropia, Second Life. I knew about those things. I knew about all the gold farming and that kind of thing that was going on with WoW. But my whole thing was like there wasn't like a great place to actually own your assets for a gamer like me. I'm like someone who wants to go and produce my own value. I want to go and, like, you know, build a farm. I want to, you know, grow a kingdom. I want to have armies and, like, you know, crafters who work for me, and then players who work for me as well, who go in and make stuff that are goods and services that are provided to other players, and all like in a really easy, digestible way. Like one of the reasons World of Warcraft was so big was because it was so easy to play. I hear all the time there are big actors who are like, yeah, I played like World of Warcraft. I got sucked into it for like 3 months, ruined my life, lost my marriage, but it's okay. I'm on a TV show now. but that's all over with. But it was really accessible. It was able to pull in so many people, and we haven't had that inside of player ownership. Second Life, I think, really wasn't for everybody. Same thing, Project Entropy. I played Project Entropy, and I'm like it's so bad that I just can't get into this game because I feel like it's the barrier to entry is too high, and just me basically, to put it not lightly, like killing it off in my head. I'm like, this is never going to take off because it doesn't have the World of Warcraft thing where they know how to capture the most amount of users. It's obviously made for geeks by geeks, and it's never going to take off. So while I was working on movies and all those things, eventually I was like, you know what? I was looking at blockchain technology. I wasn't really involved in crypto pretty much until like the latest year or two. But I was looking at smart contracts and I was like, you know what? I'm like, we're starting to get there. Like we're almost there where people can start to see this future where you can, have ownership of your items, and on the blockchain you can actually make that happen for, like an affordable rate. Someone like me, an entrepreneur, can now go use blockchain technology to build this, video game vision of being able to play games and produce value that's never been there before. So how I got started was I just like created ads and I created a technology that were still in production, but I have a patent pending for it. It's basically a way of capturing gamer time into a token system. And because for me, that's the ultimate is that, what we're actually doing is we're able to play almost any video game and able to capture that time, no matter, if it's like a small 5 versus 5, or if it's a shooter, or if it's a farming game, whatever game you want to play, as long as the creators allow it, as long as you have the creator's permission, that you can play that game and capture time in it. And it's a really big issue. There's all kinds of things involved, like how do you verify the person's a human, all kinds of things like that. So that's actually how I got into it, was this big vision, and I put up Facebook ads, basically telling people to come join my Discord and visit the website, and preparing them for a crowdfund. And so now we're I went from basically just me in a bedroom like 2 years ago to now we have like it's about 15-person team. A lot of those are contractors. I think there's like maybe 4 or 5 of us on the core team, and then the rest of it's contractors with our partner Apex NFT. They're really awesome. They build all of our smart contracts for Castles, the NFT game. And but it's been kind of an interesting road where I just came in here and I had this idea, and I basically was funneling people into the Discord and Facebook ads, and a lot of the people who were hearing my vision for blockchain gaming and player ownership based gaming actually now are part of the company. My full business partner Josh Cantrell, he was like one of the first people to actually join the Discord, and our creative director Mark Nightsky, he was probably like the first or second person to join. He was like literally almost one of the very first people. Like the first day he came in there and he was like, "Oh, hey, I followed your link from the Facebook ad." And I was like, yeah. And back then, no one knew what NFT gaming was at all. It hadn't hit that big thing yet. And I was just like, hey, and we hit it off. We played some video games together, and he kind of kept track of our progress as it was building. And how we got involved with Wax was that I was trying to basically keep the lights on and not have to go back into movies or try to sell solar panels or something like that to make the rent. So I was like, well, I got to sell something. And I'm like, well, I can sell NFTs, but I hadn't settled yet on a platform. I didn't want to go to Ethereum because at this point it was starting to cost like $20-$30 to do anything smart contract wise in Ethereum. And I'm just like, that's too much. So we had a user who's been a long time supporter of us, NRFB Toy Store. He's pretty well known in some of the wax circles. And he was telling me, he's like, hey, I'm on this Wax thing. I love it. I just bought like a bunch of Street Fighter cards and Garbage Pail Kids. And I was like, that's nice. And I'm like, I'm not into Street Fighter anymore, and I'm really not into the Garbage Pail Kids, but I think that's interesting. And he was like, you got to check it out. There's like, pretty much like no fees. You just have to go ahead and use your, just maybe have a little bit of like this Wax token staked. And I tried to figure it out. I had a little bit of trouble at first because I had a lot of other things going on. And I was just keeping track of it. I was thinking of buying some Alien Worlds lands, but at the same time, I was onboarding Mark Night Sky as our first employee, and I had to buy him like computer equipment and stuff. And I was like, okay, all that money I was putting into my account, I actually have to now go pay for computers and onboard him. But I was like, I have my eye on those Alien World lands, and then of course, like a week or two later, they go up 4x and then 8x, and now they're at one point they're worth like $14,000. And I was like, I was gonna buy a couple of those for 1,000, and that kind of thing was happening a lot in the ecosystem at the time. Well, basically the entire NFT space at the time. But I was really interested in the gaming stuff. And so that's when I convinced myself. I'm like, okay, now I really need to get figured out how to get onboarded onto Wax and figure all this stuff out. And the big thing for me is that on Wax you can actually, it's cost effective to actually trade things, and there are plenty of other reasons I've liked Wax more as time has gone on. But initially it was because in Ethereum you had to pay $20-$30 per transaction. I just paid like $5 to list something just a little while ago, while we see people list things on Atomic Hub all the time on the Wax blockchain for nothing, or pretty much close to nothing. You stake like 10 to $100 of Wax, and that basically gets you a decent amount of mileage. You can list quite a lot of things every week. I mean, for $10 of Wax, you can probably list, I don't know, like hundreds of things, right? In a week or less, so
the
or more.
CPU for the listings is all covered by Atomic Hub.
Oh, really? I
The
didn't know
RAM
that.
for the listings though is insured by the user.
Hmm.
So yeah.
I know that, but yeah, that was exactly what drew me to Wax, and I was like, this is a cost affordable way to use it. And as time has gone on, I was listening to an interview with, I think it's Quigley. Is it John
William
Quigley?
William
Bill,
Quigley.
is it Bill Wigley?
William
William.
Quigley.
Okay, William. It's Will. All right. So yeah, William Quigley, and he was saying the other day that, and there's a recent interview with Paul Barron, and he was saying that the Wax blockchain has actually never gone down. I guess it's built on top of the EOS network, so it's probably the same
Mm.
thing. But I see Solana go down. I've heard of I think it was the Polygon network went down like a couple of weeks ago, and I actually have trouble using Solana. I'm on Star Atlas, the game, on Solana, and sometimes I just try to do transactions, and then it's just like, oh nope, not for you, not right now. And I'm like, again, this is like a 2 out of 3 times thing. And I
Yeah.
go to Wax, it works beautifully. There's no problem. So technically, on a technical level, Wax has been great. I mean, it can get congested sometimes, especially did back in the day. These days, we don't seem to have that problem quite as much. I imagine it's probably because trading volumes are lower and it's affecting the blockchain less. But on a technical level, like Wax has been amazing. And so what happened was these little NFTs that I was selling called Metasource cards. I was basically evaluating how all this stuff even works, because none of us have really been here before yet, where blockchain games are a thing. So I was basically just kind of like trying to figure out like what was going to work, what wasn't going to work. Inside of like economies, there's difficulties with like inflation of assets and things like that. So how do you deal with the macroeconomics of things? How do you deal with inflationary token supply, inflationary assets, and all this stuff? So while I was getting started on Wax, and I was deciding, hey, actually, so let's move our assets onto Wax, and that's the place we're going to put our assets. I was basically just like figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And so I learned doesn't work is just a constant inflationary supply of things. What doesn't work is basically, not having a game that's not fun doesn't work. You want to have a game that's fun. So what eventually happened was I realized that my original game idea that I had for this Metasource cards, where every single card is unique and we still produce them just as we promised everybody. But I was like, you just can't have like an NFT, stick more tokens in it, and then have that be a game, because that was the original concept. And I was like, I think it'll work. But as time went on, and I was looking at everything else, I was like, actually, this doesn't work. Like this inflationary supply of tokens, of leveling up tokens, just in the long run won't work. So what happened was I was basically looking at what do people like about games. It's like as basic as we can make it. What do people like about games, and what do they like about collecting? And Atomic Hub has it really right out the gate. You guys allow blending, so crafting, and and also pack opening. So I
Yeah.
think those are two
There's
real. What's that?
there's no blending on Atomic Hub though,
There is no
but
blending.
on Wax there is.
Oh, Wax, right. On Atomic Hub,
Yeah,
there's
yeah, it's
blending.
not
Sorry. Yeah.
box.
Yeah, right. They're different. Sorry. Yeah. But
No,
yeah,
but it's all good. It's
it
all
is,
good. It's an amazing
there's a very
feature of the Wax
concise
blockchain.
difference between the two, right? Wax is the blockchain. Atomic Hub is the platform for the
The
collectors
marketplace.
and trading and stuff like that, the marketplace. But I was looking at that, and I was like, what Atomic Hub has right is that people like the crafting thing, they like collecting, they like opening packs. So I'm like, okay, so let's make a game that's all about that. Like it's all about crafting to blend the things, and people love to merge things. Some of the biggest games on the App Store and stuff are like merging games, like Merge Dragons or Merge Fairies or something like that. You basically merge three things together to make the new thing, and if you're lucky, you get a bonus thing. And I was like, that's a great mechanic, and we can do that in a game. So basically, I pivoted our original game concept of Metasource cards into, yeah, wearing the shirt here, which is castles. And I was like, and people like land. So let's make a game that's about, basically building your kingdom, little empire building game. You merge lands together to make new lands. And the whole bonus is that you might get additional land. So merge farms and you'll upgrade it to ranch. But maybe if you're lucky, you'll get a bonus farm. And so we built a whole ecosystem around that concept, and we included our original cards inside of that. So everybody who bought our original card idea for the Metasource cards, we rewarded them with Castle's assets. So the Baron is one of our most unique assets, and there's only so many of them. There's like 1,200 right now, or 1,300 of them. So they're very popular because they produce new lands. So we gave all of our original buyers of those assets one of those, because I was like, we're probably just going to pivot into the Castle being the big brand, because I love the idea. It's going to capitalize on everything that Wax loves to do, or at least we see that the gamers love to do on Wax. And so what I tried to do was I tried to create the best macroeconomic system that I could, that I thought was super simple. So you merge the lands together, and so I tried to find a way to basically make the land merging system basically the king of the game, to really make that the exciting part of the game. So I figured what we had to do then was to actually allow players to make their own lands. So you're able to make new lands using the tokens. And as time went on, I was like, a great end game for that is actually to have you get the new lands inside of a pack. So we actually just released this feature very recently, where you can actually craft your own lands now, but you get them inside of a pack. So right now, there's a lot of people enjoying the new game loop, where they get to use the resources they've been collecting from the castles, from playing castles. Now they get to use those assets to go craft new land packs, open those land packs, see if they got something good. I've become super addicted to this game loop now. I think plenty of other people do too. But that was kind of the journey, was for me, was going from tech into like, I just decided that I was sick and tired of waiting for this whole player ownership thing to happen. And I'm very judgmental of everybody else who makes other games and things like that. I look at it and I'm like, that's not the ideal. Like I'm here to like work towards the ideal thing. And it kind of had a windy road, because I'm not a Silicon Valley guy. I can't call up like Mark Zuckerberg and all of his, venture capitalist buddies and be like, hey, Zuck, I need some money. Like, could you get me like $5 million? I'll make a cool NFT game. It's not direct opposite of that. Instead, it's like I wake up, I obsess over how to build the business, how to build the team, how to build the products, and how do we get to the ideal version of the player ownership, and people being able to generate their own value inside of video games. And so, I love how Castles has turned out. People really seem to love this fun game loop of making the lands and making the land packs now, and we've built a strong ecosystem beneath it. We think, as far as the macroeconomics go, it's very strong, and so now we're working on the next expansion, which we think is going to be massive, which is
Yeah.
the heroes. I'm not sure if you've seen the artwork and stuff from
We've,
our Dungeons Rising expansion.
yeah.
Yeah, have you?
Yeah, I've talked to you. I had the
Oh,
pleasure to talk
Oh,
you a
right.
little
Yeah,
bit
we talked during the last
during
Digicon.
Digicon, yeah, and you teased a little bit of what you're doing with the dungeon expansion and the heroes as well, which is definitely going to be cool. I'm just going to give everyone a heads up that we are following the Stage Questions channel as usual. So if you guys do have any questions that you want either us or Robert to answer to, make sure to drop them there and keep your eyes out for that channel, as we will be dropping some giveaways of some Castle NFTs lands as well. But yeah, it's a project that has some very interesting mechanics for sure. I was looking a bit more into it today, and yeah, the way that the supply for the barons is set up in it, that it will decrease the number of assets that are minted of barons per year,
Hmm.
and it will increase their cost as well. I was obviously looking a bit carefully at the project today just to make sure that I was up to speed, and I hadn't really seen any mechanic like that, or not quite like it, and
Hmm.
I'm interested to see it unfold throughout time. Let's say, because as you say, in the end, in terms of keeping these projects sustainable, it's so much about dealing with overinflation,
Hmm.
and yeah, that's definitely an interesting way to go about it. But yeah, walk us through a little bit more of the mechanics behind the project as it is. So I know that you've mentioned that Barron's mint lands. Do you want to run us through how that actually happens? And what is the process of crafting new lands or upgrading the lands that you have as well?
Yeah, sure. Before I jump into the actual gameplay, I should say that, a big philosophy of our game is the scarcity. And you were saying that that you hadn't quite seen it like this before, the scarcity model. And you have, just not inside a video game. Where you've seen it is in Bitcoin. And
Yeah,
so I was trying to figure out, well, how do I deal with scarcity? I'm like, what's the thing that's dealt with scarcity the best? I'm like, Bitcoin. Like we have, it's like what, like a 12-year track record or whatever it is now. Bitcoin basically dealing with scarcity very well. And every
yeah,
year, every was it 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin having halves. So there's basically less new Bitcoin being made. And now we're here in this year where most of the Bitcoin's been mined out and the price just keeps going up. I was like, we see that work. So all we have to do is replicate that, but in a way that works for the game system. And I thought worked much better was actually a doubling, because that way, instead of having people feel like, oh, no, I'm getting less. It's like, no, now I just have to pay more in-game resources in order to make the scarcer asset. So this is actually a major philosophy of our entire game, which is anything that you're building right now is actually going to become more scarce in the future. So, if it's barons, those barons are going to be more scarce, 6 months from now. We're actually halfway to the next halving of the baron supply drops. Same thing, the castles. We think there's going to be, I think it might be a little higher. It's going to be like a 5 to 6,000 soft cap for castles. Eventually, once there gets to like 5 or 6,000 castles crafted by players, it's just going to be increasingly more difficult to actually craft those castles because of the cost. And it's just going to be like, maybe I don't make a castle anymore. Maybe I just keep accumulating farms because that's the most cost effective for me thing to do right now. Basically the train of getting castles is now over. That train has passed because of the scarcity, but there will be new opportunities in the game to get new kinds of assets. And that's kind of the whole plan, is that as the game grows and as the player base grows, we just create new opportunities, new scarcer assets. But the old scarcer assets, that those trains are eventually going to pass by, and it's just going to make less sense to be able to get those at the price they used to be. So that's the big philosophy of the game and how it's created. In terms of how it's played, it's very simple. You basically get your farms, and you can get your farms from other players. Right now, other players are the only place where you can get new lands. Only players are generating lands right now. So we have about 206, 200, it's almost like 218,000 farms that have been generated so far. Some of those were packs, some of those were players, giveaways, and things like that, which is actually another way we do generate lands is through giveaways. We don't sell them directly anymore as like fresh mints, but we do giveaways and stuff like that. So those are the sources of lands, and you basically use the lands, merge three together to upgrade it and get all the way up to a castle. Really, what you want to do in the game is try to get a castle. Like the castle and the baron are really the biggest value in the game, and that's the way it's designed, because castles give you what we call royal seal, and royal seals are necessary for doing most of the fun stuff in the game. If you want to if you want to craft, you basically need royal seals, which are given from castles. You can buy royal seals direct from us for $5. It is basically, stapled to a $5 cost from us, but you can also get them from players. So there are a lot of players in our game right now who don't even craft so much, but they just keep selling the royal seals to other players, so those players can go craft things. So it's giver, you have that option, which is what I love. It's like the whole promise of the game. You can play the game and continue to build your assets and grow, your kingdom, or you can sell those assets, and those things have value. And so our whole economy is actually really based around the royal seal,
Hmm.
and almost I'd say more than the M source. M source is a nice token, but I think if people come to our game and they look at M source, they're like, oh, M source rules everything. It's like the key token of the game. I would argue that actually the entire ecosystem is actually built around the royal seals, because that's it's just get you access to all the best stuff in the game. So if someone's thinking about getting into the game, I'd suggest to they try to do their best to get a castle. I think they're kind of expensive compared for some people's tastes. It's like 330 to 400 for a castle right now, USD dollars. And Baron's very similar pricing. But really, if you can get a castle and like a lumberjack and a couple of carpenters, you can basically keep producing your own lands. You can craft land packs, you can claim lands from the Baron, and that basically gets you in the game for continuing to merge and upgrade to castles before castles become very hard to get.
Hmm. So, and you brought up, yeah, the carpenter as well, and the lumberjack, which then will produce their own specific resources as well, like treated wood. And it's interesting to see how that is introduced into the ecosystem as well, and kind of gives it another layer of complexity. And yeah, being that the game is already very well established, or in itself, like the loops are very successful, it's going to be interesting to see now with the game progressing on to the dungeon expansion, how that all is going to be tying up. And I know that it is possible already to get packs with the heroes, or at least you have to merge three different pieces to be able to then get that pack. Do you want to talk us a little bit more about those packs in particular and what they will be used for in the future? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So first, let's just talk about what Dungeons Rising is, which is just basically the most awesome thing that has ever been on the blockchain. Like, no kidding. Like, I was just like, okay, so we have a nice little base land game. That's great. That's going to be fun. Open those packs, all that stuff. But I was like, what's really going to like seal the deal on this is the most amazing blockchain game. And I was like, you'll be able to fight monsters, get equipment, customize your heroes, and we already have a land thing in there, so that's pretty cool too. But being able to really customize your heroes, I was like, let's do that. So what we did was we've given our characters like 11 different, and then there's 11 different customized pieces to them. So
Hmm.
and there are three different heroes, so they all look different. There's like Luna the Spellbinder, and there's Sir Kaldor the Knight. He's got the sword and the shield usually. And then we have Bancroft the Thief. So he usually has assortment from knives to relics to bombs and stuff like that. And each of these characters has these 11 different components. So with Luna, you can give her a spell book. You can give her like energy from one hand. She can be holding like a pet dragon. She can be using a staff. She can be using a dagger, a scepter, an orb, and put all these things in her hand. And same thing with the clothes. You can put her like in, like a witch's dress, or like an evening gown, or just like, a dirty, torn up piece of leather jerkin thing, that's just like she came off the streets of, Baldur's Gate or something like that. And, but you can, but the other cool things, we don't stop there. We're like, well, what's really self-expression about? It's being able to choose how they look like, really. So we have three different color variations for every piece that they have. So, do you want her to look like, a dark witch, or like a white witch or something? You can kind of get to choose what these characters look like, as well as the coloring. So this really allows you to start to customize what they look like. And we just went over the interface yesterday with Apex NFT, who built our smart contracts and website. And we were discussing how this interface looks, and we just made it so we decided actually you're going to be able to have basically like a showroom, or rather I should say like window shop, and be able to see what any of the combinations could possibly look like. And then if you want to go buy those, you can actually click buy and see who if anybody's selling that on the market, because we're going to sell them in packs, but if you want to get it, you have to get it through a pack or a player. But you'll be able to do that. Click buy and see if somebody has it on the open market. If it's like a mythic set, might not be available because those will be harder to get. But it's really all about that. We're like, it'd be really cool to be able to customize these heroes, and the whole point of the game is fighting monsters to basically try to upgrade those heroes and get the best armors and the ones you like. And one of the big icing on the cakes that we decided to do with this whole expansion was there's a key component that we think that also works really well inside of basically the market trading and what people like to do on Atomic Hub, which is they like to trade. They like to have a good reason to trade things. We saw it in games like Farmer's World. I think we also see it in Million of Mars, where people like need certain different assets for different reasons, and they go and they trade those assets to get them. Trading some kind of factory for another factory because it's like there's a bottleneck inside of what you need. So that is also what the Castle's expansion is going to do, is because certain monsters, we actually allow you guys to also craft monsters and fight the monsters. I kind of think of it like giving you pinatas that you can crack open and see what's inside. But we decided to basically build, a class system where, if you might only be able to specialize on, say, like the spellbinder, maybe able to specialize on the mage and have her build her up to like legendary equipment or mythic equipment. But if you built her up that high, you might not have the resources to have the other two heroes built up. So we decided to do was there are going to be monsters that have class restrictions, so they can only be defeated by the spellbinder, by one of the hero classes. And so what this will start to do is encourage a lot of trading between the equipment, because you need the equipment that matches the hero, but you also need monsters that match the hero as well, and it just creates a lot of trading. So you guys are probably going to love this in terms of the secondary market fees. but so will we, right? And our whole philosophy is if people like playing the game, they'll trade. They'll trade assets in order to get the ones they want. That's a sign that the game's great and it's working, people want to play it. So we do have packs dropping. Our philosophy was that we've had a couple of problems before in the past where there were scripters and botters who would basically set up scripts to steal. I'm sure steal is a technical word here, but they were able to acquire like 60% of our assets because they had set up scripts. And we don't think that was at all fair to the majority of our players. And obviously we have to take responsibility in how we set that up, and just let people get this on a whitelist that we had set up, that apparently the bot and scripters are like, oh, that's easy. Like, I know how to get around this little whitelisting thing that they set up, and they got around it. So with the way we're doing the pack drop right now, we've decided to do it in fragments. So you can buy basically 3 different fragments, merge them together to create hero packs. We decided to do it in basically you can get 1 fragment with our token Metasource. You can get another fragment with our new token Rune Source. And 3rd fragment you do pay in wax tokens, and it's $35 in wax tokens. And then when you merge the 3 of those together, you'll be able to get the first hero pack. So there's going to be 500 what we call exalted packs. That's the best pack. It has the chance at rare heroes. And then we also have standard packs, 1,500 standard packs, and that's going to be the first in our pre-sales. And then after that, we're kind of evaluating, do we do this again with the fragments, or do we do it with like a direct wax drop? When we originally were planning this out, we wanted to do about $3 million in sales on all of the dungeon assets. We don't know if that's really attainable right now because of the way the market is. Maybe we can do half that. But so we're kind of evaluating the best way to do that. But we're doing the fragment thing because we want to take care of our core players, and we think it's the best way to get around the bots and all that stuff is let them know to craft these fragments and merge them. And yeah, we think it'll work out pretty well. I think most everybody right now who's in the game and crafting these things, they're kind of getting together what they need in order to make these hero packs. But we're really excited for it. Really super excited. And I feel really bad because I see someone on my right who I don't think I've been introduced to yet.
Oh, Zeus.
Is it Zeus? I don't know. I don't know. I think she's with Atomic Hub. Oh, Zeus. Yeah, it is
Yes.
Zeus. I
Yeah,
see the name.
Zeus, exactly.
Zeus.
Yeah, sorry, didn't really have we kind of just jumped right in and really didn't introduce myself. But yeah, no, hi, Zeus, just co-host here.
Co-host. Okay. Are you like co-community manager, or do you
Yeah,
think that's what
yeah,
Nuno is, community manager? You're both community
Yes,
managers. Is that both your title? Or?
yes.
Oh,
exactly.
okay. I was like, so one of them's got to be community manager, the other one's not. All right. Well, nice to meet you, Zeus. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, so there's a difference between the standard and the exalted packs as well, in it that there's a different number of assets, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the exalted one has 2 heroes, the standard one has 1, and then the standard pack has how many equipments? 3?
It is 3 equipment. It is 3 equipment for the standard, and then 7 equipment for the exalted.
Okay, so there's a big difference there as well. I see.
Yeah. There's a difference, and the biggest difference is that the exalted pack has a chance at rare, where the standard pack will have only common and common heroes.
And in terms of the amount of different combinations that will be possible, did you do those calculations already? Or?
Yeah, it's something like it's like it's a ridiculous number. It's like almost infinite. It's like it's either in the trillions or quadrillions, one or the other. There's a lot of zeros. It's almost so big that it's like not really a number I've like committed to memory. I was just like, oh my gosh, there's just too many zeros. We're gonna say like almost infinite, right, amount of possibilities. And as time goes on, we're just gonna release more, assets. We're gonna have expansions, or will be new hero classes, and then we'll also create new art, basically new equipment as well for the heroes there. So all the existing heroes and new expansions will get new items, and that will just continue to expand the amount of possibilities. Did we lose Nuno?
We lost
I,
Nuno,
I
but
crashed momentarily.
okay, there.
It's just a flash crash.
Yeah, it was a flash crash.
Maxed out his CPU usage.
I pretty much managed to hear all of it. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. And something else that I remember we talked about a bit during Digicon was the possibility to incorporate the mutable attributes as the image for these NFTs, so that whenever one of these changes were to be applied to that NFT in particular, that would show up in the image. I don't know if you, and in that we might segue to another conversation, another question that I wanted to ask you as well, which is how is your relationship with Apex NFTs been so far? I know that they have done a lot of work in the wax space. I've had the opportunity to interact with them a little bit, being that they are Brazilian. I'm Portuguese, so we share our native language. So I've had the opportunity to chat with them a little bit. How has that partnership been like? And yeah, what are some of the things that you guys are working on? Obviously, the dungeon expansion now, but then yeah.
Yeah, I say we're really lucky to be in a partnership with them. Victor, who's the CEO of the company, he was actually working for another company when we first met him, and we think they really didn't appreciate him and his work ethic, and they laid him off, and we thought it was kind of weird, and later he came back around, and I remember having a conversation with him, and I was like. I was just telling me about his experience, and I was like, you should really just like start a business on your own. Like you seem very capable. You just and then a couple months later, we were using some people who were not working out for us, and Victor came by and he said, so how's it going over there? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, look, I actually started this company, and I'm like, oh. I'm like, he did what I told him he should do, which is just like start on his own and start his own company. And he's been rock starring it. So our relationship's been great with them. They've been rock starring it. They've been proven to be very capable in creating the website and reliable and trustworthy. And, he's kind of like me where, I'm constantly obsessing about how to create the better player experience, how to improve the experience of the game. And so is he. All the time he's coming to me and he's like, oh, we thought of this improvement, and we already did it. Here it is. Or sometimes, what do you think? But a lot of times he's just like, oh, we just made this improvement. Like, here you go. You're welcome. And I'm just like, oh, like, thank you. and so that's been really great. Like it's really great to have a partner who cares about the player experience as much as we do. And so there's always things that can be improved. We have an endless list of things that we want to have, like updated and changed. But they've proven to be very highly capable, and that they really care about the game, and they care about our players as well.
Yeah, and I remember that when we were talking at Digicon, you were pretty much saying that you had to bring up the new mutable attribute feature up to the developers, I imagine in this case up to Apex, to see if it would be something that you guys could implement into these NFTs. Have you done that already? I'm just kind
Oh, we
of...
haven't, but what's really helped is the filters thing that Atomic Hub added.
Okay.
I remember I emailed Atomic Hub support like a month or two. It was probably like 2 months ago, and I was like, could you guys add basically, filter where we could actually, sort things by charges, because or rather specifically our because there are some things that Atomic Hub would list by default and things it wouldn't a couple of months ago. Now it's changed because you guys added the filters, but when you guys added the filters, it allowed us to sort those things. So it's not, ideally what we wanted, which was, we're like, oh, well, let's just put the number of the charges of crafter left on the image, and then we'll have a marketplace and just use the Atomic Hub APIs to because all that's already supported there. But we just like have customization where it transforms the image on top. But it's right now it's like one of those nice to have things. Like we sometimes talk about what it would be like to have a nice marketplace where everything's exactly the way we want it to look, and we just use the Atomic Hub APIs to do all the back end stuff. But it's still like been one of those nice to have. So when you guys added a feature like that, it just like gave us one more reason to keep it on the nice to have list rather than to actually do it. So yeah, we have plenty of things on the nice to haves, but I gotta say, while we're on this topic of conversation, the opportunity that Atomic Hub has provided with the marketplace, and and the space and the partnerships they're building, we definitely wouldn't be here without Atomic Hub's platform and all the value that it provides. Usually when I start to tell people about my company, one of the things I tell them is that I was able to build this company without having to build the marketplace, and if I had to build the marketplace, that's a whole other project, and it's a bunch of money. And it's one of the reasons that we've never had these things before. This whole NFT thing was because if you wanted to, sell player items or have a player ownership thing, you needed to have like millions of dollars to build a backend system and security system to handle all that stuff. But now we can do it all on the blockchain, and we can have creators like myself, and then and then marketplaces like Atomic Hub provide different points of value for users. So we really appreciate having the Atomic Hub platform here, and building with you guys.
Even just the improvements that the atomic assets have provided to the wax space, like even in the possibility or supposing that you were to create your own marketplace inside your game, all of the users in your game would still benefit from the liquidity of every other marketplace, which is something almost groundbreaking. I'd say it's something that definitely doesn't exist in other blockchains, and it's something that is definitely being looked at as one of the main strong suits of the Wax blockchain and of the atomic assets ecosystem in itself. So yeah, it's definitely really exciting to see all of the use cases and all of the utilities that people are giving to these tools that not just Atomic Hub or Pink has developed, but as well all of the other platforms that have come into the space since. There's a lot of exciting stuff, and in that sense, yours is definitely a project that's trying to take advantage of that as much as possible, or at least breathe into it some exciting mechanisms. In terms of the dungeon expansion, which is obviously one of the main things to look forward to, like, is there something you can tease to us right now, or is there something that in terms of the mechanism or how it's actually going to be working, do you have a bit more clarity that you could provide to us now, or is it something that you guys are still working on?
Well, I think what people usually think is like, why should they get into the game. Like why should they get into the game? Is it going to provide them value? And no, there are a lot of users on Wax who who like to see games as investments, and I'm okay with that because I've speculated a lot on NFT gaming. We are a US based company, and we can't issue securities legally. We just cannot. So we can't, but so we sell gaming collectibles is what we do. But the really cool thing about that is it allows us to really focus on the gameplay. So if there's anything I'd really tease, it's just that we're really focused on the fun gameplay, and I think sometimes it takes kind of like a re-education for people to realize that if they just play a game, that if they find it fun, then other people are going to find it fun, and that hypothetically is going to give value to your assets. While we've had this whole price drop thing, like I've never been afraid of our assets going to zero or something like that. And the reason is because there's only so many assets, and we know that as long as there's so many buyers, so much demand and so much supply, is that there's always going to be kind of consistent price within the bounds of that supply and demand, as long as the game is fun. If the game isn't fun, then people have no reason to be there. They're like, oh, well, if it's not making me money and it's not fun, why would they even be inside the game? So what we've tried to do is basically do the thing that we can control the most, which is the gameplay. If we can control that the gameplay is fun, and as long as the macroeconomics make sense, in this case, Royal Seals basically being the biggest point of value in the ecosystem, well, then we can make everything else work. And so if there's one thing I would tease, it was just that we think that Dungeons is going to be extremely fun, that there's going to be a lot of reasons for people to play Dungeons and build up their heroes. Basically, anything better than a rare armor is going to be very hard to get. We basically have rarities going from common to mythic in both the equipment and the heroes, and you can't even get anything better than a rare from a pack. When you open these packs, the best you'll be able to get is rare. So if you want to get a legendary, an epic, legendary, or mythic hero, or mythic, any equipment like that, you need to get it from another player who's found it in the game. So it's going to be really difficult to find, especially like mythic equipment and things like that. We're probably going to drop them into fragments, so it's not quite so brutal, so you can actually merge these things together and see what kind of mythic equipment you got. But it's really our focus on making basically, the ideal. We want it to be fun, and we want the macroeconomics to work so that people have a reason to play the game and get the rare assets. And we're really a game that's based around the scarcity. You want to get the scarcer assets now before basically the supply starts to run out and we get into a new cycle of a new part of the game, and new things are scarcer than the stuff that you're getting right now. Because we think that works. And that's the best thing I can tease, is just that the games only get better and more fun, and yeah, that's just our focus, all that stuff.
I don't believe you guys have a release for the dungeon expansion yet, do you?
We think we're probably going to release the first systems, which is basically going to be the hero customizing, probably like 2 months from now, maybe at most like maybe 2.5. But we're working on a lot on the back end, and I think in NFT days it might seem like forever, but we are working a lot of stuff on the back end. It is a pretty heavy system, and it's not really simple. Like I never wanted to basically make a system where it was like you fight a monster, you get a couple of gold coins, and you're welcome. It's like then you upgrade your equipment. Like cool. So like now I went from like a common armor to an uncommon armor. Like for me, that wasn't enough. Like you really needed to have more, and the ideal for me is the customizing. I know when I played World of Warcraft, I loved just like getting the cooler armor, and sometimes I would look at a piece of armor and I'm like this armor is stronger, but I don't like the look of it. I like the look of this armor better. That's like 20%, 30% worse. So I'd just be like, what's 20 or 30%? Let's just, let's just get rid of that piece of armor and put on the new piece of armor. But, the look of things is very important. It's also why we allow color variations, because maybe you don't like a particular color. Well, then we got 2 other options for you of colors you might like. So, I even forget what the question was now, but yeah.
No, I was just saying, in terms of things to look forward to and what we're seeing.
Oh, right. Yeah, the thing to look forward to is just that we're continuing to build the game out, and we do want to create a Castles 3D game that would be very different from uh, what it is right now. The Castles 3D game would be more just even economically, the way that we build in-game economics would be very different because I really have the belief that in order for in-game economies to be sustainable, the gamers have to be producing the most amount of value. And it's very different from, say, mobile games, where, mobile games are like, okay, so you go and you play the game, you get entertainment, and then they monetize it with advertisements, or they monetize it with, the gems. You buy, like, the little, the consumables, you buy gems to, like, upgrade your stuff. But, but the thing is that the developer makes value in producing the game for you to play, but the player doesn't really generate their own tradable value, not as an asset. They generate value as like entertainment and personal experience, but the players, when they play those games, they don't actually generate value from the playing of the game. So with the Castles 3D game that we're starting to plan, we're not yet developing it, but I'm putting together design documents and looking at the best things to do. But I'm like, what I really want to have happen is for a player to come into this world, pay only, maybe like, 30 bucks for a hero and maybe 50 bucks for a parcel of land, and be able to make their own place here, being able to go grow their kingdom, find a place in the economy that's good for them that they can build, and that there are probably going to be major consumers in the economy somewhere, someone who has a lot of disposable income who's willing to pay a lot of money for a mythic armor set, but they're only going to get that from a gamer that's able to build it. So for Castles 3D, we want to build an economy that's more like that, and we're kind of starting to do that a little bit with Castles. I think we do sell a little bit at the top, the lands and that kind of thing, but with the scarcity models. But we kind of want to shift the conversation about how players generate value inside of video games, where there's more of a base play level playing field, and then they get to work their ways up. And we can easily make money on secondary market fees and like charging like maybe $5 a month for users, same way that World of Warcraft did. But what's even better on top of that is that they then get to like collect those things and trade them amongst themselves, the way I think that World of Warcraft should have let players do, but we obviously know they didn't because they had no financial incentive to. They were making so much money hand over fist, there was no reason for them to risk doing something like this. But now I think we've gone so long where people like me have, I paid probably over $100,000 in video games. If we add in NFTs, probably way more now. But I mean, I bought probably $100,000 worth of video games and video game consoles before this whole space ever existed, and all I have to basically show for it is my personal experience of those things, which you could say is now showing up inside me building the company, but otherwise, it's not really anything that I could have traded. Like I can't trade you that experience, So for me, that's where it really is. Where there are a lot of people, older gamers like me, who realize, gosh, how much have I spent on video games? And I literally have nothing to show for it because I mean, I didn't keep my old junky consoles. I threw all those things away. I'm not sure it would really make me that much money, anyways. Depending on the condition of it. So I think there's a lot of older gamers like me who are getting this old and realizing, actually that's crap. It's a real scam is buying video game items and assets and not owning them. And this is a whole conversation I have right now because we got booted off of some Facebook ads and stuff like that for talking about player ownership. And I'm just like, what, you think I'm the scammer? Like, wait a minute. Like, what about all these other guys who've been like selling game assets forever and you can't even own them? Like one day it's going to be a reverse. It's going to be people are like, oh, you bought, you bought that asset? Cool. Like, it's how much is it worth? Like, I can't trade it. They're going to be like, why did you buy an asset that you can't trade? That's going to be the old school conversation around video game assets. It might take time, 5, 10, 15 years. I don't know how long, but we're all here to, I think, accelerate the process.
It's something that I usually say as well, is that I do believe that along the line, definitely there will be this shift wherein it will be the user that will start pressuring the video game companies or even certain projects to include NFTs into their games, because it will just, as you said, there's no motivation for us to keep sinking fiat or yeah, whatever currency into a project wherein we're never going to have any sort of true ownership from those assets. I came into the space, the play to earn space, with Gods Unchained, which is actually kind of like a carbon copy of Hearthstone, wherein I'd spent a lot of money and I was well aware of this notion of, okay, I put a lot in, I'm never going to get anything back, and it's definitely broken, and we can definitely appreciate that as gamers, you know. Yeah, and something else that I wanted to say as well, I really find interesting the equivalencies that, let's say, that you create between your project or NFT games and crypto in general, be it the halving of the barons and some other mechanisms in your project as well. Like, is there any project in particular that you take inspiration on, or that you see, you know, really has it figured out, or do you think that there's still a lot to be discovered in the space, let's say?
You know, this is going to sound funny, but my real inspiration comes from like one of the best idealists that I know inside of business, who was Steve Jobs, before he passed away. But the thing about Steve Jobs is that he was willing to fight for the ideal. And, you know, there are a lot of terrible stories about Steve Jobs and what a horrible human being he was, but one thing that he did really well was that he really cared about building the ideal. So when I go and I build the company and I build the gaming systems and all this stuff, you know, I might not be, you know, a perfect human being, and I'm definitely not Steve Jobs at all, but I take inspiration from thinking about how he did things, and so this is almost a thought I have like almost every single time I'm thinking about, you know, building the business. How do we do it? All this stuff. I go back to this moment in time that I remember seeing the iPhone. And I remember looking at the iPhone. It was like beautiful. It was sleek. You know, it had the front touch screen. And, you know, anybody who's old enough to remember having cell phones back in those days remembers what a terrible experience having a cell phone was. It was just like, you know, it just felt like there were idiots making the cell phones and they couldn't make like a good cell phone. And then Steve Jobs was here and he was just like, here you go. Like, here's your dream phone. Like, it's, you know, it's got the keyboard on the screen, that it goes away and it comes back when you want it to. And it was just night and day difference between having basically all the crap that you'd been subjected to use a phone, to basically the ideal phone. And there it was. And obviously it wasn't completely perfect, but it was a night and day difference between old cell phones and the new one. And the way I always looked at it was that, you know, he knew what the ideal phone could look like. And he was talking about personal devices for years before, you know, they were even feasible, you know, and computers are basically like, you know, the size of, you know, this screen, or, you know, bigger, you know, there's this massive bulky thing. He's like, one day it's going to be like in the palm of your hand. And people are like, okay, Steve. And he's like, no, really. And when he finally got to that point, he had built that ideal, you know, it changed everything. Now, you know, whenever I, watch an old episode of Star Trek and I see them like on their little tablet pads, I'm like, oh, we have those now. Like, I remember watching the show, be like, that's never going to happen. They're a little thinner back, you know, in Star Trek than they are right now. But, you know, I guess we just have to keep waiting for the future. But, you know, that's the inspiration I take, because I feel like he had an ideal vision of what it looks like to use a computer. And for him, that was it. It was the personal device that could have GPS, that was beautiful and easy, and you wanted to use it. And so when I build a company, that's what I think of. That is where I draw inspiration from. It's like, how do I build the ideal? And it's kind of been, you know, a windy road for us. You know, I came up with this technology for general, you know, earning and gaming and commoditizing the player time that we still haven't used. But I'm learning a lot about running a business like this. I'm learning a lot about what works and what doesn't work inside of player ownership, so that by the time we go and get like major investors, like $5-10 million to invest in a company in our Castles 3D game, it's like, well, we know what we're talking about. You know, we're the experts in building macroeconomics inside of player games and player ownership. And we can do it because we can show you the track record of our assets inside of Castles. You know, people don't know this, but if they go look at like the value of the Royal Seal inside of Castles, the value's held extremely well. At worst, it's been like a 20% drop since the height of the NFT bull run to, you know, the bottom. I think like the biggest drop was maybe like 25%, and now it's probably back up maybe a little bit more than that. While plenty of other assets have dropped in value, 80, 70%, whatever. Like we've had some game assets drop that much, but the Royal Seal specifically, which is an in-game consumable that we've built the economy around, has been sustainably within like a 20% variance. And we think that's a massive achievement because I can measure that and I can take that to investor and be like, hey, so this is how we built the game and this is how we can prove it works, is because we're sustaining here. And as we grow the user base, we want it to go back up to $5 of the base price, but that's going to determine on us and onboarding marketing to new users. So we're working on that next. But there we go, my long answer. So
no, it's interesting because especially the monetizing the time, I think is definitely the next step in play and earn, let's say, or even play to earn.
Yeah, for me that's the ideal. Play any game and be able to commoditize your time, and effort, and have that be universal across all game platforms. And there's a lot to it. Mostly one of the biggest challenges there is verifying human participation. But that's but for me that's the ideal. Be able to do that, and everything else is just kind of the building to that.
There's a project that has a similar approach, which is Brave. I'm sure that you're familiar with it. Not only the browser, but Brave Basic Attention Token, which is their token as well, and pretty much that's kind of what they're trying to do. Is obviously the advertisement companies make a lot of money out of our attention and out of the attention that we give to those ads, and pretty much Brave, the project, is just trying to pull us into the loop, let's say, and have us share part of that profit. So it's interesting to see how that is going to be adapted into gaming, because obviously in the end that's what we're really committing to the project or the game, is our time, and that's really like what, more than the action itself, that's what makes sense for us to be rewarded for, let's say.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to be interesting in terms of onboarding users into the wax space in particular, or into your project. Like, what are some of the main challenges that you face or that you feel that users face? And in that sense, if there is something that us at Atomic Hub, or even us personally, Zeus or Nuno, could help with.
Gosh, I haven't tried to use the wallet, basically like make a new wallet in a while. But I remember that was my initial problem getting onto Wax, was I didn't understand how to get Wax. Like I was able to make a wallet, but I didn't understand how to get Wax, and that was what prevented me from initially getting and buying those lands. A part of it, but part of it is I just couldn't even figure out how to buy Wax, because I was trying to use different things that were there and it kept telling me they didn't work. Like the Ethereum, like I had plenty of Ethereum, but the bridge wasn't working. I wasn't, I use a market trading system now, but back then I didn't know how to do that. I wasn't really well versed in different market trading systems. And so I would say just being able to buy assets was probably my biggest hurdle getting in, and being able to buy Wax. But in terms of our challenges in marketing, what we're working on is probably like a demo to kind of help people understand how to play the game. Another problem that we face is that we've been, we basically had our advertisement account deactivated for like 6 months, almost like a year ago it happened. But we were trying to sell our Metasource cards, and got deactivated. So I've kind of had this internal dialogue that like we just can't even run ads because nobody will let us. And now we're at a point where like now we just have to try, because we do need user growth. We want user growth, and we want new people to find the game. And one of the easiest ways to do that is just pay for ads, especially we think people like the game and people want to play the game, they'll get into the game. So we think we have product market fit, which basically means that people want our product, they'll pay for our product. We just have to get the product in front of them. So that's one of my challenges. I mean, it's not necessarily something Atomic Hub can help with, I think, is except for unless you guys want to be partners, that might help us out a lot. Because I don't know if you guys do ads, but definitely anything that makes this look more legitimate is going to help there. And so I actually do have a call with I think Martin on July 6th about a partnership conversation call. And we want to be partners with Wax. We're again, I'm not Silicon Valley guys. We're not used to this whole networking with who we consider the big guys because we consider ourselves the small guys right now. But we think we can provide value to each other. And so this is pretty much the endless conversation that never stops in my head is how do we get more users and get in front of more people. And there are challenges, but I think probably just if Atomic Hub can work with Wax blockchain and the process of creating new wallets to just make that process of like getting assets and buying assets as simple and trustworthy as possible, that's going to make a major difference. And I'm sure you guys probably already know this. I think we heard that there's going to be some kind of straight to credit card purchasing thing on Wax. I'm sure that's going to help quite a lot, and maybe even some kind of like buy an auto stake process, because we're thinking of this. We're like, oh, let's do starter packages for some of our games, and maybe that would work too on Atomic Hub. There might be like a starter package area where for different games you could get players set up with just basic starter packages of assets, like a couple of these and a couple of these together. And have those be advertised. So people are like, oh, this is how I get into the game. I just buy this little starter package. And so we were talking about doing that on our side, but then also auto staking Wax to their CPU. Oh, buy the starter package, we'll automatically stake Wax to your CPU. So now you don't have to worry about that. Like, you automatically get this staked and you just had to pay us a little bit of money. And now you don't have to go and stake it yourself and get all, techs scared about how do I do this stake thing? It's going to mess everything up. We'll do it for you because we can do that.
That could be done. It had to be done by private or custom smart contracts, but that could be possible for sure.
Yeah, I think just whatever eliminates basically all the barriers that people have. I think number one is buying assets. Number two, how do they stake the assets and how do they do that? For some people, it might be easier just to put up a credit card and be able to just do it for me. Just do that thing I'm afraid of doing on my own. I had some other topic that was important too, but I forgot what it was.
We're working, just to say we're working on all of those. So it is now possible to use your credit card directly on Atomic Hub to get Wax via the bank's on-ramp. And in the future, it will be possible as well to buy NFTs directly. And not only that, but as well, we have just released a new interface for the wallet creation, wherein we kind of run the users through the options that exist in the space. In this moment, it just kind of outlines what are the differences between Anchor and the Wax Cloud wallet. And in the future, it is not live at the moment, but in the future, we will facilitate the creation of new wallets via this interface. So we are still working, as is one of the most difficult challenges in the space, is ensuring that they are actually real users and not bots that are trying to exploit that system. So we are still developing the securities for those, but in the future, via Atomic Hub, it will be possible to just create a wallet without having to pay the 5 Wax fee. So definitely something to look forward to.
Yeah, I know the bot thing's a problem. Luckily, our game is basically bot proof. Like there's really no reason to bot our game. And that's kind of the way we designed it, was like, we don't want to force people to get multiple accounts and things like that. So just, but yeah, bots are definitely a problem. And there was one thing I do want to chat about. Maybe this is more of a conversation to have with Martin for next week. But one of the things that we deal with, one of the biggest challenges we have, is around the exploitation of our players, and there's scammers out there and things. And so I've sometimes thought, like, maybe I should email the Discord people and be like, hey, I have an NFT game. We have to deal with scammers a lot. Maybe you guys could change a couple of things in Discord to make it so that, people aren't as easily scammed, because right now, like the way they have it set up, you can be messaged by anybody by default. And I'm like, what if you had on the server, you had a setting where actually I don't allow people to like message each other from my server. So that would mean that then bots that join our channel basically, can't message people at least directly from our server. And I'm sure there are other protections that they could put in for that if they basically thought it was important. But I think as this space gets bigger, we're kind of small guys. So if I go to Discord, I'm like, hey, can you get this changed? I'm like, oh, great, made a note. You're welcome. It was like, you guys are, Atomic and Pink, they're bigger. They could go to Discord and start to, actually, what could we do things to protect users? Because we've literally had, I think we've had tens of thousands of dollars of assets be stolen from users, and we actually had a user today who basically was also scammed out of assets. Basically, he was trading with another user in our trading channel, and I think either a bot or something saw that they were doing a trade. So what the bot did was the bot sent the trade last, and then apparently according to the Atomic Hub interface, it lists the latest trade first. So he just thought, oh, this is the trade, and he went there because it was the latest trade, and it was actually not the trade, and so he got scammed out of those assets. So I would say, like, the one thing I never thought that I was getting into was basically having to defend my users from, scams and exploits and things like that. And obviously, there's not only so much I can do about it at this exact moment, but for me, it's probably the number one biggest issue. Sure, I'm building my company, whatever, but at least that's in my control. I can control the building of the company, the building of the game. But what I didn't anticipate was the protection of the users from being exploited and scammed. And I do love the openness of decentralization of the blockchain, but I think if there was one thing that I could, now that we have the other stuff taken care of on the filters of the website, and you guys are working on the wallet thing, there's one thing to request is just brainstorming how we can protect the users. Because it's I honestly just sometimes feel a little guilty of, like, I want people to play my game, but then I have to inform them how to protect themselves, and we do. We try to post messages everywhere to everybody to check your links. We're actually in our Dungeons expansion, we're going to have 2 monsters specifically that are like PSAs for, like, reminding you to, like, check your links and don't get scammed, and and trust no one. Like, we basically have, like, these PSA monsters are specifically for that, and trying to get into the player's head, remind them they have to be cautious, because it's like the wild west out here when it comes to this. You want to get to Oregon, well, you have to survive dysentery, rattlesnakes, native basically conflicts with Native Americans. Whoever's justified in this fight, still someone's going to die. So it's just really dangerous out there. And I think it's one of the biggest conversations I have. Obviously, I have many in my head right now around the business, but it's the one that I feel the least amount I can control, the least, is being able to protect users. And the more time that goes on, the more I feel like I do have to take responsibility for it. Like, I can't just sit around and be like, oh, well, too bad for them. It's like, no, like, we have to do whatever we can to protect users. And I think probably the next stage would need to be to talk to other people like you guys who are also in a position of being able to help users somehow so they don't get exploited by these people.
Yeah, that's the big challenge with decentralization. It's that in the end, the onus really rests on the user. So in that sense, we do recognize first and foremost the importance of educating everyone on the space, not just the importance of proper security operations, but in general, as to these notions of decentralization, of the responsibility that they have with their wallets, their private keys, and things of the sort. On that, I've just shared in the Stage Questions channel the link to the Atomic Hub blog, which is a dedicated platform that we have recently created just for articles in regards to our platform. Namely, the 2 articles that we started off the blog with was first how to get started on Atomic Hub, and the second one was the top tips for safe trading and wallet security. So definitely we will keep pushing for a lot more content like this, just to make sure that as much as possible we share with the users all the information that they need to stay safe. Not only that, in terms of the trading in particular, I know that we haven't released a lot of details in regards to it, and I can't really go into it too much, but in regards to the trading in particular and the risk of that situation that you've just described happening, that is something that we are working on a system right now which should most likely either completely mitigate that or almost mitigate it or completely eradicate that instance. It's still being developed, so I won't get too much into it, but these are things that we are very much putting a lot of effort towards. And in general, unfortunately, because we do believe, not because we believe in decentralization, but we do want to defend the decentralized nature of the space as much as possible. So we do believe that it is the user's responsibility, and that it should be the user's responsibility to ensure the safety of their assets. But obviously, as we are a big platform in the space, and as a lot of users trust us, with their assets, we want to make sure that we take as many precautions to ensure their safety as well, even though, unfortunately, because of that, there is a big limitation as to what we can do. Something else.
Well, I think it's important not to be resigned about it, because that's the thing. It's like, sure, we can say it's their responsibility, but it doesn't improve the situation. The only thing that can improve the situation is taking responsibility for our role and having them be involved in what we're doing. So just looking at that, I made a suggestion earlier to my users where I was like, what if you could only trade to people that you verified that you are able to trade with? Well, then, if you had a selection, so you'd be able to put in the wallet and be like, I will allow trades from this person. So if you're in a Discord chat and someone's like, hey, here's my wallet, you just got to plug that in, and then you can only receive the trades from that person with the thing selected.
Maybe that's what we're working on.
Maybe. Okay. All right. I mean, obviously, maybe I'm just like a step ahead of the game here. But
maybe that's something like that. We haven't. We have teased that we are working on a proper trading feature, friend system, and notification, and that they will all interact with one another. And this is one of the main focuses that we have, obviously, is to make those features as safe as possible, and to kind of have those, be it the friend system and the trading system, combined with one another.
Right. I like that. Yeah, that's the kind of the thinking I was thinking of. I'm promoting is like trying to think of outside the box ways. So, but I'm sure maybe I'll get to talk a little bit more with like Martin about this next time.
Yeah.
But I think Discord would be my other thing to go after, is like, how can we talk to the creators of Discord and see what they can do to help us protect our users as well, who keep getting just massively spammed by users. I think some days like we're banning like 100 bots or something that are trying to enter either automatically or manually.
I must say that ever since I did enter the space, that Discord has done a very, very big effort to protect users as well. There have been quite a few measures that they have implemented, namely they try to flag automatically users that send DMs. So if a certain user gets enough reports as a scam, you will notice that sometimes you'll get a DM spam, but then after a couple of seconds that will have been omitted because Discord itself just says this message is from a likely spammer or something like that. And they've started doing that inside servers as well, wherein if a user is flagged in various servers for spamming messages in the channels, his messages will start being hidden as well, and you have to press a tab so that you can see it. So, but it's a space that is growing, especially on the Discord platform, at a rate that they could definitely not cope with. So obviously they're trying their best to stay on top of it. But they definitely are trying their best, at least.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you letting me hijack the conversations for us. I just got to let it out because I've been obsessing about this lately, and I'm just like, I gotta do more to protect our users. So.
No, I feel you, and especially. I mean, Zeus and myself, being that we deal with the community side of the platform, that's obviously one of the main concerns of users in general, and that's definitely one of the main things we want to ensure. And be it on the content side, create information and alert users so that they are aware of these instances, or even implement as many securities or as many features as we can to ensure that the users remain safe is definitely a priority to us. Unfortunately, though, there are limitations within the system that we are introduced in, so it's a tough balance to try to strike. But it's definitely a priority to us, no doubt. We usually try to keep it kind of around an hour. We've gone way past that, but it was amazing, and there's no issue with that at all. But I don't know. I believe we could kind of wrap it up, unless you have anything else that you want to go into. This is your stage, your space. If there's anything else that you want to mention about your project, any upcoming feature or drop that you may have, or anything else, yeah, feel free to take the stage now.
Yeah, well, first I just want to thank you guys for creating the space. And, I was really surprised to see that you guys had, a new rep channel and basically, building the relationship with the creators and creating the space here for me to talk about the game and connect with you guys. Like, I really appreciate it. Definitely just surprised by it and really super excited to, create partnerships with, Atomic Hub and Pink and the Wax blockchain. And, it's nice to see that you guys believe in what we're doing as much as we do, because sometimes we felt a little alone out here, trying to build this thing. And yeah, as far as the game, it's castlesnft.io. And, our game is alive, that we have constantly events all the time and things happening. We're very active in our Discord, my business partner and I. So I appreciate everybody joining us and listening to the conversation. And yeah, this has been really great. And I really appreciate it, and Zeus. Thank you.
Yeah. A huge pleasure to have you on. I've dropped links to the project on the Stage Questions channel, be it for the project on Atomic Hub or for other links that might be useful as well, so make sure to check those out. Yeah, I did run 3 giveaways of 3 different lands, 2 farms and 1 ranch, which I will be sending the prizes over to all of the winners after the call. So yeah, hang tight for those. Thank you so much for joining us, Robert. It was definitely a huge pleasure to have you on the call. We will still go over the scheduling for the upcoming week and some of the things that people should look forward to as well. So if you want to just tune out right now, tune off actually right now, that's more than fine. But yeah, I will not let you go before I express our deep gratitude for having joined us, and not only that, but congratulations as well for your win of the most recent Big Projects Creators Pick. To everyone that is listening, not only were you able to hear more from Robert today, but as well, we will soon post a promo for Castles NFT on our Twitter space as well. So make sure to look out for that. Yeah, and thank you so much, and congratulations.
Thank you. Next time we're going to have to set you up with some better giveaway rewards. So we'll hook you up next time.
I improvise, but it's pretty much just what people need to actually be able to get involved with the game, which is something that we try to do whenever we do run these calls. Just because obviously there will be FOMO, people will be interested. So now, yeah, they have a good excuse to get into it. Yeah, but definitely next time, if you can, we definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. All right, thank you, Nuno.
Cool.
Thank you, Zeus. Everybody have a good day.
Have a good one. Thank you so much.